Yo. In this video, I'm going to go over everything you need to know in order to start dominating in Arc Raiders. Dying to robots, I got you. Dying to players, I got you. Don't know what to bring into a raid, I got you. All of the video topics should be popping up on screen now, with chapters down below to match, so let's hop into it. First, what is Arc Raiders? I'm going to keep this section super brief since I imagine a lot of you watching are familiar with the extraction genre already, but if you are new to these parts, then here's what you absolutely need to know when starting out. Arc Raiders is an extraction third-person shooter. Simply put, this means the game revolves around equipping a loadout, usually consisting of some weapons and armor, consumable items like heals and grenades, and finally a backpack or something equivalent that will allow you to pick up loot. Following that, you'll choose a map and then launch into a match either as a solo or in a squad of up to 3 people with the intended goal of scavenging as much loot as possible, potentially engaging in PvE or PvP combat. I'm about to just swing with the fucking shotty. Fuck this.
Get in.
That guy's won. And then if everything goes according to plan, you'll finish it all off by extracting with your hard-earned loot. Once you extract, everything you had on your character at that time will be brought with you back to the lobby to facilitate crafting, trading, completing quests, and ultimately allowing you to improve the power of your character for future raids. If you are to die during a match, that means you will lose everything you looted so far, and everything you chose to bring in with you to begin with. But don't worry, this video is going to help you die a lot less. Now that we got that out of the way, let's hop into the Raider Hub/lobby and everything it has to offer you. Starting off with your stash, which can be accessed by pressing tab. Within your stash, you will find all of the items you've been collecting from your adventures, and it's equipped with a plethora of ways to sort, organize, and even merge stacks across all of your items. Additionally, you can also recycle and sell items directly from your stash, which is certainly a nice touch. Finally, if you ever need to split stacks, you can hold Alt and drag, or you can hold Alt and double click for items to be transferred directly between your stash and inventory, and likewise, you can hold Shift and left click once to regularly move items between your stash and inventory as well. Following that, we have the workshop, which is home to all things crafting. When starting out, you'll only have access to a workbench, but you can install additional crafting stations once you have the required materials, and crafting regular items is largely no different. Simply open up a particular crafting station to see what's available, collect the required materials, and then you are good to go. Keep in mind that you are able to acquire blueprints, which will unlock additional items to be crafted, and on top of that, you can level up each of the crafting stations to unlock the ability to craft certain items as well. Uniquely, the gunsmith station also has an additional tab up here at the top, which gives you the ability to upgrade any weapons you currently have in your stash, once again at the cost of crafting materials. As for the Raider tab, the only important aspect for a beginner's guide would be the skill tree. It's pretty self-explanatory, each level gives you 1 point to spend, you get the idea. The conditioning tree is basically all niche bonuses like making less noise, taking less damage while downed, and somewhat random things like that. The mobility tree, as expected, improves your mobility, stamina, dodge roll, and slide primarily. And then finally, the survival tree mostly has to do with being able to field craft things in raid, being able to carry more stuff/loot quicker, and even breach locked containers. I think it's a bit too early for anybody to say that there is a guaranteed best tree to follow, and really I'd recommend doing what sounds most enjoyable or most applicable to your playstyle. But if you want my perspective on what I think is the best and or the path that I'll be taking, it's basically maxing out the left side of the mobility tree as well as these 5 points for sliding further and faster. Then I'll get the first 5 points in the conditioning tree, and then I'll end it all off by putting everything else into the survival tree. Moving on, we have the traders, and I'm not going to assume that you're incapable of figuring out these basic things, so I'll just simply clarify that here you of course can buy items from each of the different traders. Some are locked by level, and many of them have a limited stock which refreshes every few hours. In addition to that, the different traders are also where you will accept and ultimately turn in quests. And last but not least, we have the Raider decks, which are this game's version of battle passes effectively, some of which will be free and some of which will require the paid currency to purchase, and you can collect the credits required to unlock the items in the Raider deck by completing these little challenges over here on the left. Now, onto the first major topic of the video, what should you actually be bringing with you into a raid? And let me just quickly clarify that I've got around 3,000 to 4,000 hours played, split between multiple different extraction games, so trust me when I tell you that this is a huge part of what determines how successful you're going to be as a raider. And I can't stress this enough, but especially when it comes to bringing in utility/healing items, it is so important. So, in order to try and cover this topic thoroughly, I'm going to break it down into a few different categories, starting with essentially a minimalistic loadout, perfect for those just starting out and wanting to really get their feet wet, followed by a mid-tier loadout, and then finally I'll wrap it all up with just a few niche case examples that are definitely worth mentioning. Also, do keep in mind that you should still exercise some personal judgment here, and feel free to experiment with things as you see fit. I'll also quickly mention that there is a step below the minimalistic loadout, which is the free loadout. This will provide you with a single random gun plus ammo, a light shield, 2 bandages, 1 shield recharger, and a few other random consumables to go along with it, which all things considered is really not too bad, and I'd recommend running at least a few of these if you've never played extraction games beforehand. Now, on to the good stuff, starting with the minimalistic loadout, for which I'd recommend rocking something very similar to this. We've got a Rattler and a Pharaoh, and you'll really want to upgrade your Rattler as much as possible since it gives you additional magazine size, which is extremely important in determining whether or not you'll be able to actually one-clip somebody, whereas upgrading the Pharaoh is much less important since it only gives you reduced reload time, which is still helpful, but far less than the mag size on the Rattler. Alternatively, you can swap the Rattler for a Stitcher or Kettle, which are both very solid options, and honestly, I actually prefer both of them over the Rattler most of the time, but I'm not sure that will be the case for everyone else. Of course, you'll also want to bring in a reasonable amount of ammo as well, and I'd recommend about 120 medium and 20 heavy for this setup, excluding some of the niche cases that I'll talk about later. Moving on to the utility, which is really the important part, and at an absolute minimum, I'd be bringing in 5 bandages, 3 shield rechargers, a single stimmy, 3 or more grenades, at least 1 smoke grenade, and if you're playing with a squad, I'd run a defib in your safe pocket. In regards to the smoke grenades, since I'm sure some of you might be confused, this is extremely valuable in 2 instances. One is when you're trying to extract, you're pushing in the buttons and a team rolls up on you and tries to stop you. You can then smoke to create an opportunity for you to actually get the extract started. And then also in a 3v3 fight, if one of your teammates gets downed, it is exceedingly valuable to be able to throw a smoke on them, run over, quickly hit them with a defib, and get them back into the fight. I'll also quickly add that in regards to attachments, particularly when it comes to automatic, semi-automatic, and shotgun type weapons, that they are definitely very valuable, and I'd recommend making use of them whenever you can. When it comes to bolt action type weapons like the Pharaoh, Renegade, Osprey, and even in some regard the Anvil as well, it's definitely a little less important, but it's certainly not useless, especially when you can add things like a silencer or any attachments that reduce ADS speed or aim down sight speed, just as an example. Up next, for the mid-tier loadout, you're going to have to use your imagination just a little bit here because it's still launch day at the time of this recording, and I only got to play for about an hour and a half before making this video, so I don't currently have everything I'm about to talk about, but I'll make sure to pop things up on screen whenever necessary. Starting with the weapons, there's honestly a lot of wiggle room here based on your preference, but I would almost always recommend at least one somewhat long-range option that uses heavy ammo, so either an Osprey, Renegade, Anvil, or technically even the Bedina isn't a terrible choice here either, and this serves the dual purpose of being valuable for obvious reasons in PvP situations, but all of these guns also have moderate or strong arc armor penetration, which makes them very ideal for dealing with all types of PvE. The second weapon slot is really dealer's choice and where a lot of the wiggle room comes in. Some people really like to use one of the 2 available shotguns here. Of course, the Volcano is still disgustingly strong, so I definitely can't blame them. Alternatively, the Venator, Torrente, and Tempest are all also extremely strong. And finally, a more budget option would just be once again either the Rattler, Kettle, or Stitcher, but just fully upgraded and with full attachments. Here is a pretty solid weapons tier list for you to just peek at as well in case it helps. For your augment and shield combo, I'm a pretty firm believer that in most cases the combat augments are going to be the optimal choice here in squad play, and then of course pairing that with either a medium or heavy shield is the clear go-to. Moving on to the utility, and to be clear, if you're planning on fighting arc mini-bosses, the queen, or anything like that, then what I'm about to say will not cover it, and you will need to bring in more utility, but I'll cover that in the niche examples. For a general mid-tier loadout though, I'd recommend something along the lines of a stack of herbal or sterilized bandages, at least 2 to 3 surge shield rechargers, 5 stimmies because these things are actually insanely strong and super cheap, so you might as well bring a full stack, either 5 small grenades, or you can bring in a few heavy or blaze grenades if you have them, and ideally you really just want everyone in your squad to have quite a few throwable explosives, which I'll talk more about their value in a PvP guide coming in the next few days. You'll still of course want a few smokes, plus your defib, and then finally I'd recommend bringing in an extra stack of regular bandages and regular shield rechargers just as backups. I'll also quickly mention that you'll probably want to have at least one person in your squad with 1 to 2 zip lines in case you end up needing them, because they are quite valuable. For the niche examples, I'm going to keep it short and sweet since this is a beginner guide after all, and simply say that if you're intending to try and kill any of the arc mini bosses, your best friend is going to be grenades, and ideally wolf packs, heavy fuse, and showstoppers. All of these are particularly effective at taking down the big boys. In addition to that, you'll need to bring in additional meds as a precaution, alongside a lot of additional heavy ammo, and ideally a weapon that has strong arc armor penetration, such as a Pharaoh or Anvil. Now that you're starting off on the right foot and know what you should be bringing into your raids, there are 4 main things that will actually be happening within the raids themselves: looting, PvE, PvP, and ultimately extracting. Unfortunately, PvP is just a bit too broad of a topic, so I'm going to have to cover that via a standalone video coming in the next coming days. With that being said though, let's go ahead and start off with looting. I'm going to try and keep this pretty basic and brief as to prevent the video from becoming obnoxiously long, so if you want a more in-depth look, I'd highly recommend you go check out my recent standalone guide that specifically focuses on looting, which you can find linked in the description. However, from a surface level perspective, looting in this game is rather simple and quite intuitive. If you open your map by pressing M, you'll see a plethora of highlighted zones, and each of them have a high density of certain types of loot, such as the water treatment control having industrial and mechanical loot types. Additionally, the color of the zone corresponds to the value of the loot, yellow being medium value, red being high value, and generally anything outside of those zones falls into a lower value category, but they can still definitely be worth your time if you're just starting out or you need a specific type of loot. A good example would be looting these apartments up here called the Ruby Residence if you are in need of residential items like duct tape. Beyond that, most of the information you need is clearly presented within the game itself, which is a huge breath of fresh air for the extraction genre. However, if you want to get a little bit advanced, I'd recommend making use of a third-party interactive map to figure out where things like weapon, medical, and utility cache spawns are, field depot locations, and those are the primary ones, but there are a few unique caches like the raider caches, arc probes, and arc couriers, but this interactive map isn't fully updated with the arc probes and arc couriers quite yet. Up next, let's talk about the PvE, which it goes without saying that the PvE in this game is pretty darn amazing, but from a new player's perspective, it can come off as quite challenging because it sort of revolves around most of the enemies having some sort of weak spot, and if you aren't aware of what it is, then all of a sudden the PvE can feel very difficult. Starting off with the small ground arc robots, we have the Tick, both of the little roly-poly guys, and the weak turrets. Truthfully, none of these require too much explaining, so to keep it brief, the Tick usually hides out on ceilings and doors and will die to a melee swing or a single shot from a Pharaoh. Both of the roly-polies will be, you guessed it, rolling around indoors, and also will both die to a single shot from a Pharaoh. The base level turret, on the other hand, will take 2 shots from a Pharaoh to kill, so just duck in and out of cover to land the shots, and usually these are also found indoors. Following that, we have the low tier flyers, which are the Snitch, Wasp, Hornet, and technically there is something called the Spotter, but they're combined with an arc mini-boss, so we're not going to worry about that right now. These are certainly a step up in difficulty from the previous ground arcs we discussed, but still very easy if you know what you're doing. The Snitch will die in a couple shots from a Pharaoh, and ideally you want to target its rotors to kill it much quicker. It also doesn't attack, but if you don't kill it quickly enough, it will call in 3 additional flyers, usually consisting of 2 Hornets and 1 Wasp, which is unideal to say the least. Following that, the Wasp is quite easy and has 4 separate rotors, which are unarmored and its weak points. Hit 2 of those with a Pharaoh or Anvil and it'll go down immediately. It will attack you with machine gun fire though if left alive. Finally, the Hornet, which is certainly the most troublesome of the 3, although it has the same weak points as the Wasp via its 4 rotors, but the catch is that the 2 on the front are heavily armored, which means you specifically need to shoot the 2 rotors on the backside. If you hit both of those with a Pharaoh, Anvil, or anything similar, it will go down immediately. But once again, if left alive, it will try to zap you with a taser that does quite a lot of damage. However, you can dodge roll to avoid the taser entirely if you do it at the right time. Beyond all of the aforementioned Arc robots, there are also Arc mini-bosses and bosses, which realistically, these definitely need their own standalone video to cover, especially the bosses, but I'll do a super quick rundown on the Arc mini-bosses for now. First things first, if you aren't going in with the intended goal of taking down Arc mini-bosses, then the sincere best advice I can give you is to keep an eye out and avoid them at all costs because they are not playing around.
Oh, this spider is really angry at me, I think.
Oh my! First up, famously known as the Nuke Getter, Lobby Wiper, and Demon of the Sky, we have the Rocketeer. Its primary weak points are its 4 thrusters, and you should aim to fight this fella from inside a building by just dodging in and out of cover between his rockets to land some shots or throw grenades. The Wolfpack is super good against this guy. Following that, the Leaper. Simply mag dump into its big red eye and make sure that when it jumps towards you that you have enough stamina to sprint plus dodge roll out of the way. Once again, using a building is pretty helpful here. The Bastion, this one is actually decently easy if you have a trio. Its weak points are its yellow unarmored joints in the legs, and it also has a little yellow canister on the back as well. You should let one person hold aggro and just take cover during the machine gun fire, and everyone else just shoot the back canister and leg joints. Bombardier is very similar to the Bastion. For this one, you have to kill the flying spotter drones, as this is what acts as its targeting, so to speak, for where to shoot its rockets. After that, same as the Bastion, you'll just want to target its leg joints and rear. And finally, the last leg of a raider's journey is successfully extracting, which, unlike most other extraction games, it's actually pretty straightforward in Arc Raiders. The first thing to note is that if you open your map by hitting M, you can easily see all of the available extraction points, and there are 2 types to be aware of: the elevators and the raider hatches. The elevators are clearly distinguished via the timers next to them, which indicate how long they will remain available. These extraction points are also not confined to a player limit, meaning you can fit multiple teams in one at the same time if you'd like. And after being used by one team, they will remain available for any other future teams to still use, so there is no shortage of availability to be able to extract as long as you can stay alive. The raider hatches, on the other hand, have no time limit and can only be accessed with a raider hatch key. It's also worth noting that these are confined to a single person at a time. Just some quick tips to be able to extract safely here at the end would be to have one person run up to hit the button. After that, everyone should slightly spread out and take cover because it takes about 20 to 30 seconds for the elevator to actually be available, and it makes quite a bit of noise which will attract players. Once inside, if you want to be extra safe, you should throw down a smoke on one of the consoles before trying to activate it, because you are very vulnerable while doing so, and a coordinated team will 3-2-1 you with 2 to 3 Pharaoh shots at once, which will instantly knock you. Now that we got that covered, let's quickly go over the settings and hotkeys. It goes without saying that I have no idea what type of computer you're working with, but what I can say is that this game might have been optimized by Jesus himself. I mean, everyone I've talked to is getting insanely high frames, especially considering how amazing the game looks. So starting with the graphics, you can see what I'm using in the background, and if you just want the best competitive edge possible, then more than likely just crank everything down as low as possible. But if you want something that retains some competitiveness and still keeps the game looking amazing, then I'd recommend keeping foliage and shadows on medium or below, and then obviously motion blur turned off with your field of view cranked up as high as possible. Next up for the hotkeys, personally I've only made a few changes here, namely I've attached my quick use wheel and dodge roll to my 2 thumb mouse buttons, and I've attached shoulder swap to Q. I believe by default shoulder swap is on X, which I wouldn't really recommend unless that actually feels comfortable for you, because you will really want to get in the habit of shoulder swapping a lot in this game. Additionally, I'm using an in-game sensitivity of 45 combined with a mouse DPI of 800, and beyond that, I would say that the gameplay, audio, and accessibility tabs are all entirely up to you, but I do just want to point out that you have a decent amount of customization options available for your crosshair within the accessibility tab, and here is what I'm currently using. Just keep in mind that the actual crosshairs will close in towards the center of your screen whenever you are actively aiming by holding right click. And that's going to wrap up the video. I've got a bunch more Arc Raiders content coming your way very soon in the form of funny/competitive PvP gameplay videos, a standalone how to kill every Arc in the game guide, and even an extensive PvP guide video where I collaborate with a collegiate level Valorant player who has dived in even more than I have to Arc Raiders to give you guys some seriously amazing advice when it comes to winning more fights. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe. And with that, I'll catch you Raiders topside. Wait, this guy's trying to fucking... This guy extracted us! No. I got out. Oh, no, you... Oh, GG.